City Council meeting this August 27th, 2019. Our agenda has been posted in various places and on our website, and if you would like a copy of that agenda, it's in the middle of the room on that desk there. We'll follow the agenda as outlined. We'll first start off with the Pledge of Allegiance and an invocation by Councilmember Taylor, after which I will conduct the roll call. If everybody please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our dear Heavenly Father, as we bow our heads and come before Thee this night at the beginning of our City Council meeting, we are grateful that we could be gathered here as citizens and business people and scouts and employees, and we express appreciation for these great freedoms that we enjoy, for this community that we live in, and for all the many blessings which Thou hast so graciously given unto us. We pray that this night we will conduct the affairs of this city with civility, with knowledge and strength, that we as a council might have the knowledge to put things into place that would be for the best benefit of our city. We are grateful, Heavenly Father, for all those who fight for our freedom. We pray that we will be a gracious and a grateful people for all that we've been given. We are thankful for those who serve our city, for those good citizens who live here and do business here. And we do appreciate Thy watchful eye, and pray now, Father, that we will do Thy will this night, and these things we seek for in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
I'll now conduct the roll call. Councilmember Chris Jansen.
Here.
I'll note that Councilmember Sheldon is currently absent. I do expect him back here soon. Councilmember Barnes.
Here.
Councilmember Carroll.
Here.
Councilmember Taylor. Here. Okay, item number 2 is a 20-minute public comment period. We'd ask anybody that would like to make public comment to keep it brief, 2 to 3 minutes. We have one that has offered up a written request, and we'll invite him up first. Mitch Bullen, would you come forward at this time? And if you just state your name, even though I just stated it.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Mitch Bullen, and I'm a fairly new resident here in American Fork. Been here for about a year. Moved into the Arrive neighborhood just south of I-15. Since I have a short period, I'll just get right to it. There's a lot of new developments going in that area, and I just feel like traffic flows need to be improved to facilitate the additional traffic in that area. I have some suggestions with a map correlating there. Number 1, at 3rd West and Mahogany Drive, there's a 4-way stop there that doesn't really make any sense anymore because 3rd West is much more busy than Mahogany Drive. In fact, one side of Mahogany Drive there is a dead end. And so I think that should be changed to a 2-way stop. And then on the other side of the freeway at the Frontage Road and 200 North there, that ought to be a 3-way stop. The traffic coming from the Frontage Road trying to get on to either 2nd South or 3rd West can get really backed up, especially right after a front runner train comes, drops people off. And maybe eventually a roundabout would probably be the best way to get traffic through that area. Number 3, that Frontage Road there is currently has speed limit of 25 miles an hour. There were houses there on that road when I moved in, but they have since been demolished. So I believe it's only commercial, and they're wide. The roads were just redone with wide. It's really wide, and traffic flow right now is generally traveling between 40 and 45 miles an hour, even though the posted speed limit's 25. I think we ought to bump the speed limit to more match the flow of traffic, maybe 40 miles an hour there. And then the last one is number 4 down at the 5th East exit. When I work in Orem, so when I come in, I exit northbound I-15 and head south on 5th East. And there's a light there that gives me a left turn permissive, But when traffic going south on 5th East gets backed up trying to get on the freeway, there's no light there to stop to tell them to not go through. The light is maybe 100 yards, 150 yards north of the intersection. And so when traffic gets stopped up, I've seen several instances where both directions think they have the right of way, and there have been really close calls. So that, yeah, if you, I can point where I'm talking about. Anyway. So, yeah, there's a light right here, just south. No, up there, way up higher. Sorry, do you have, where's the mouse?
Right as you're going on to I-15 south.
So, yeah. Sorry. Trying to make it quick here. Right here, there's a light that gives the left turn permissive right there. But the southbound traffic, their light is up here. So when traffic gets stopped up as they're heading south, between here and here, these cars think they have the right of way, and these cars think they have the right of way.
I think you're just backwards. I think the other intersection is what you were talking about, isn't it? No?
5th East. Oh. Yeah, no, this is it.
This is it.
That's
I'm
where
sorry.
I'm
No,
talking. Yep.
I've got it flipped, yep.
Yep, that's where I'm talking. So anyway, there's a section there where cars can get stopped because of traffic going on the southbound I-15. That, yeah, they get backed up, and then they don't know that the traffic coming southbound has a green arrow to turn left onto that road, and there are a lot of these, and especially traffic coming off the freeways. If there's a green arrow, they're not slowing down. So an additional light right there to stop those cars ought to be added.
And this is due to my ignorance, but because it's a freeway on-ramp, off-ramp.
Yeah, is that a UDOT thing? Yeah, that probably is. I don't know how to, is that something that you can,
Well, we can absolutely request and ask them about issues. To say add a light is adding $1 million.
sure, I believe that.
They're expensive, and,
But,
and they have to coordinate. But it's something.
Right.
Certainly, it's a concern. We can raise that and look at that.
Okay.
And we meet with them monthly to discuss various issues throughout our city with
Great.
state roads. And so
That's it
I,
for
w-
me.
I would just say this, man. I'm going to turn this over to our Public Works Director,
Great.
and I'll have him respond to you. Look at these concerns. I'm thinking back when we were, when I was on the council years ago, that Mahogany, that little dead-end street, boy, they fought hard to get that stop sign in.
Yes, they did.
They were here. They
I believe
were
that.
very, very concerned about just
Safety of the
that
kids.
safety of their kids right there.
The problem with that four-way stop is that it backs traffic up so that the frontage road, people coming onto that 5th East can't get in because traffic's backed up under the freeway. So, anyway,
So
it
but
probably
thank you,
made
and-
sense
and-
back
and
then, but
we'll-
it doesn't
we'll-
make sense now.
Again, there'll be a reply back to you. I've got all your information from your written
Great.
request.
Appreciate
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was just going to say, it's hard for the people coming out from Mahogany to see the other cars, especially if they're moving fast. So I think that's why they wanted the stop sign kind of a way.
So maybe just add the one on the south side of the freeway to a three-way stop there.
Come to consider. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right, is there anybody else that would like to come forward with public comment at this time? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment period, and I'll move on to the city administrator's report.
I don't have anything to report tonight. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. All right, city council reports. I'll start with Councilmember Christiansen.
I don't have anything either.
Okay. Councilmember Barnes.
That makes 3 in a row.
Boom.
Oh my gosh.
Tic-tac-toe.
Councilmember Carroll.
I have nothing to report for probably the first time in a year. So,
Councilmember Taylor.
come on.
Mayor, I'd like to be able to be the one that keeps, no, I have nothing to report.
Well, now you're putting the pressure on the mayor here to report, and but Councilmember Carroll, I think I usually have something to say, so welcome again. I said something. All right. But nothing substantial to report, so. All right, we'll now move on to the common consent agenda, consisting of the two things that are there. Is any concerns, there been any reach out to change the minutes, Laura Lee, or any?
I don't think we
There.
have any, they're good tonight, thank you.
Okay.
Agenda.
Have a motion by Councilmember Taylor
I'll second.
and second by Councilmember Carroll. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a roll call vote. Councilmember Christiansen,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Okay. Now move on to the action items. Item number 1 is ratification of city payments from the period of August 6, 2019 to August 20th, 2019, and approval of purchase requests over $25,000. Any questions on the city bills?
I'll move to ratify the city payments and the purchase request over 25,000.
Have a motion by Councilmember Carroll
I'll second.
and second by Councilmember Taylor. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Item number 2, I'm going to hold for a little bit and move on to item number 3 is a review and action of a reimbursement agreement for Keystone Construction for improvements on 700 West. Yeah, I'm going to hold off on 2 and I better circle it.
So this one's different than the printed one, the one.
Yeah, the one we're looking at's
Oh.
different. I don't think the amended agenda got loaded to Dropbox. But we do still have the agreement was mailed to us, for item number 2. Anyway, yeah, we're good to go there. Mayor,
I am going to, I can work off this one on the, I'll have to go off the amended agenda. So, and item number 3 on the amended agenda is review and action of a reimbursement for Keystone Construction for improvements on 700 West. I appreciate Scott for sitting up close here. If you have any questions.
I didn't have any.
Can you put up the motion there, Vendlin?
This was a big one. I remember that, yeah. 58,000 reimbursement. Yeah, I was good with this. I'll make a motion. I'll move to approve the reimbursement agreement for Keystone Construction on 700 West. Is that what?
No, yeah, you're right. You're right. I will second that.
Have a motion by Councilmember Carroll, second by Councilmember Taylor. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Item number 4 is a review and action on 2 purchase agreements for the acquisition of the 300 North right-of-way. Again, Scott's right here close, if we want to bring Scott up to give.
Is this the one that's on the east side, right?
The south side.
South side of 3rd North.
South side of 300 North. This one we've been discussing for a while,
Yeah.
isn't it?
I thought that one was in a different location.
Councilman Barnes, I don't remember if we've been discussing it. I know,
Property.
certainly, I don't remember discussing it, I don't think here with the
Some
council, but
adjustments, yeah.
it's on the south side of 300 North, east of North County Boulevard. A couple of little slivers that, in our master plan, it shows us wanting to widen that road. That is the intent, is to do some road widening. That properties, the person who is just recently purchased it is looking at developing it. And so we've been in contact with them about buying those now before they build, and then being able to widen that at some time, but at least locking that down now. So there are 2 different agreements because each different property is a different owner. They're related, but it's a different entity. And so that's why it's two different agreements, one for each piece of property.
I do have a question on page 26 of the packet where it mentions, now where did it go? It was here. Maybe it was 27. The legal description, and it wasn't a real legal description. I'm sorry, it's not on the page.
Page 20.
Yes, page 26, and the property description, number 1. This part B. I mean, that's a description, but not the legal description of the kind that I've always seen. Is that laudable?
And that's part of the agreement. I'd have to look at it. I'm pretty sure we have the full survey description on the plat itself.
Okay.
And this is just kind of, the intent was to kind of reference this, that's the description of the property that we're buying a piece of. We're not buying the whole thing. It would be just a piece of it, which is shown on the plat. The proposed plat, I should say. Sorry for parsing my words there.
If you wanted to add clarifying language there, you could. You could.
There we go.
You could add the language as shown on Exhibit A is 575 square feet.
It's not a legal description.
But it's still not the legal description, is their point, I think. That was a little confusing to me when I first started to read it, because it looked like kind of the same thing, but one was smaller and one was bigger, and I just had to read it 2 or 3 times to figure out it really was 2 separate pieces of property, basically at the same address.
Yeah.
So
Portion of.
it just took a little while you can't just speed through that one. You got to pay attention.
Well, we'll work on making those clearer.
No, it wasn't your fault. It's just the nature of the beast.
So could we make a motion of the approval of this purchase agreement with a enhancement of the legal description, the proper legal description to be added? Could we do that? As according to the drawing in, what are we calling that, Exhibit A?
Yeah, you could add that language.
And then you could put that legal information in there, Scott.
Thank you. We can do that.
So I believe I just
So
made a motion.
did you just, I'll second it.
Okay, I'll accept that. I have a motion by Councilmember Taylor and a second by Councilmember Barnes.
I do have a question. This is probably for Kyle. It's indicating it will come from roadway impact fees. Is that something that a pot that we already have, or will it be like a credit that it will go to? Okay, it's money that we already have in there. Okay.
It's money that's already in the impact fee fund that we've already been collecting, so we already have the money available to pay this.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Any other questions? I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
All right, item 5A is review and action on the final plat of the Allred subdivision located in the area of 1030 East, 300 North in the R1 9000 residential zone. Any questions for staff?
Mayor, I'd move approval of the final plat of the Allred subdivision located in the area of 1030 East, 300 North in the R1 9000 residential zone, and to authorize the mayor and city council to sign the plat and accept the dedications with instruction to the city recorder to withhold all recording of the plat subject to all conditions identified in the public record associated with the August 7th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting.
Have a motion by Councilmember Taylor,
Second.
second by Councilmember Christiansen. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
5B is a review and action on the final plat for the Kessler subdivision located at 435 East, 200 North in the R1 7500 residential zone.
So this is Calvin's old house?
It is, yeah.
Mayor, I mean,
We
Almost.
grew up in that area, so just around the corner.
I'm willing to make a motion to approve the final plat of the Allred subdivision
This
located
would be
in
Kessler.
Kessler subdivision. I'm sorry. Located at 435 East, 200 North in the R1 7500 residential zone, and to authorize the mayor and city council to sign the plat and accept the dedications with instructions to the city recorder to withhold recording of the plat subject to all conditions identified in the public record associated with the August 7th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting.
I have a motion by Councilmember Carroll, second by Councilmember Barnes. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor,
aye. I looked all through that, Brad. Is that Dean? Or
Yeah.
Dean that's putting that together?
No, it's been bought by this gentleman in the
Oh,
front.
gotcha.
And,
Steve, or, yeah.
Mr. Kessler had to reverse the mortgage and he could not do anything, so he had to help him understand. It was a major
Gotcha.
ordinance.
Okay. Thank you.
Item number 6 is a review and action on an ordinance approving amendments to section 15.01.152O of the American Fork City Code relating to detailed drawings. Thank you for coming forward, Scott.
I anticipated a question or two, just in case.
I have just a personal comment, and that's more when it talks about the planter strip, the asterisk says that has to be turf, which my personal opinions are that planter strips could be something even more water friendly than turf. However, delineating that for developers might be more than we're into tonight, so I'm okay with it, but as a personal note, I think planter strips can be other things.
It says planter strip to be turf. Does that mean must be turf?
I believe that is how it is now, and I certainly am not opposed to changing that. And it's probably more of a discussion than tonight, because I'm pretty sure there are other parts of the
That's what
code
I would
that
assume,
would need to be
yeah.
changed, but I very much in support of that, and would be happy to go look at that if that's what you'd like us to do and bring back to you another night.
Some type of zero-scape option?
I would request that maybe we don't
Absolutely.
postpone this item.
I would agree with that. I want the
But-
street width to be standard. We've talked about changing that. Of the
Right.
curve.
The only thing
We
that
can go back
changed
and change.
on this was, at your direction, we had, it was 64 feet wide, now it's 62, with the asphalt width totaled 34, now it totals 32, from curb to curb. I should say from lip of gutter to lip of gutter.
Mayor, I'd move to adopt the ordinance approving amendments to section 15.01.152 relating to detailed drawings.
I have a motion by Councilmember Taylor,
Second.
second by Councilmember Christiansen. Any discussion on the motion? Now, for the record, I'll note Councilmember Shelton has arrived. So,
Okay.
I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Okay, I'll do the 7. Review and action on a resolution appointing David Bunker and/or Laurel Allman as administrators of the city's Putnam 457 plan.
Mayor, I'd move to approve the resolution authorizing David Bunker and/or Laurel Allman to be signers of the American Fork City 457 Deferred Compensation Plan.
I'll second that.
I have a motion by Councilmember Taylor, second by Councilmember Carroll. Any discussion on the motion?
Just a quick question. How many employees do we have that participates in that?
I don't know off the top of my head, so that's the fire department there.
Right.
So, and it's just our full-time. We probably have close to 25 or 30 is my guess there.
All right, thank you.
I just had a little question. The and/or kind of confuses me. do they both need to be signers on certain documents? Or does this also authorize either one of them to sign? Or the and/or just kind of confuses me in this situation.
If it requires two signatures, we would both sign, but if it allows for one, then it could be either one of us.
So it depends on the form or whatever it is. Okay, thank you.
All right, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
All right, I'm going to pull up to number 2, item number 2, review and action on a resolution authorizing the city to execute the interlocal cooperative agreement of Light Hub Communications Agency. And I don't know if we're going to have, can we pull that document up? Okay. All right, council, let's just kind of talk over any concerns that we have together. We'll look at this.
So I read over this with my non-legal mind. I had talked to the mayor about a couple of things that concerned me, and he and I kind of worked through that. I would really like to know, not being well-versed in their local agreements, but just enough to get by. When we had our work session a week ago, we talked about the attorney that was there. I'm sorry, I apologize, I can't remember her name. She was here, and she talked about some very specific things that would make this agreement, would alleviate some of the heartburn we had with those things that we'd talked about. Can anyone demonstrate to me where those are, those measures of added security that kind of would assuage the trepidation we had for this going forward? Do we know where those are?
Yeah. If you would take a look at section 10.9, separate agreements, this is the section where if there is a municipality or a member of Light Hub who has assets that could be used for Light Hub in general, this gives the mechanism by which that entity would be able to either lease or provide those amenities to any other community or member within Light Hub, and it would go through Light Hub. So Light Hub would approve that. But if you read in 10.9, it basically makes sure that the payments will be delivered to that entity directly. So if you read through that, that's where we make sure that if we have an asset, and there's an example here, by way of example, Light Hub may enter into an agreement for the use of the American Fork Network Operations Center and American Fork's mid-mile fiber between Spanish Fork and downtown Salt Lake City, and that would be an agreement that American Fork would control. So we would control that contract.
Yeah,
That's
I read over that, and now I understand that. And I was thinking, by way of example, American Fork, with their network operating center, could enter into an agreement with Light Hub. So that's one of those things. So that's our asset, remains our asset, always will be our asset, but that's a separate contract with Light Hub and the interlocal agreement, or the interlocal. It's a part of the interlocal agreement.
It's a part of this provides for that to happen.
I think the key language there that I see says may. So nothing that says that it shall or it needs to or anything like that. It just says, hey, they can enter into a contract, which, quite frankly, even without that section, any interlocal can enter into a contract with another agency for services and things of that nature, right? So, anyway, that's how I looked at it.
Okay.
Any other concerns that the council has? I've kind of been through this. I actually redlined it prior to the council receiving it, some things that I felt were important to be added, namely how board members were brought up. I just felt like it was important to kind of follow the pattern of that we have seen and the cities understand, where basically the name is presented by the mayor, the council has to ratify that name, and they're put onto that board, and there's a process that we do that for all our boards. And so I felt like that was just a good,
Just the standard presentation of the mayor and approval by
the governing
council.
body of that city, yeah.
I don't have the thing in front of me, so you tell them about it.
Okay, so thank you, Barbara. Councilmember Christiansen, excuse me, brought up one item in 11.6, and that is the last sentence. It currently says, unless otherwise requiring a 2/3 vote, a majority vote of the total votes of the entire board, whether or not all board members are present, shall constitute action by the board. That actually should be a majority vote of the total votes of the quorum present shall constitute action by the board. In other words, the majority of the board who are present at the board meeting would constitute action by the board, unless it's required to be a 2/3 vote, which would be outlined in the document earlier. So we just need to change that it's the majority vote of the total votes of the quorum present.
So I was trying to figure out, we got this huge, massive thing we're trying to accomplish here in the next 2 months. And a lot of stuff flying, right? It's coming pretty quick, at least for me. And so I was trying to think, where does this come in line with it? I know when Clark and I had that meeting with David and the mayor, and we were talking a little about it, we thought maybe the interlocal would come after we had already got the bonding approved and things of that nature. And I'm just wondering, where does this fall in line? Because basically what we'll do tonight is we'll enter into this agreement. I guess that's part of my question is, you know, taking Tim's advice, anytime you get into a contract, he always says you look at your first way out, right? And so I'm just wondering, if we go down this route and it's something we decide not to do, as I read it, was a 50-year deal, right? Commitment, which I actually like. That's one of the problems with interlocals is people jump and ship and you can never do long-term planning when you don't know who's going to be a part of it. But what do you see there, Tim, as helping us out?
So the 50-year sunset is statutory. The current interlocal agreement talks about the dissolution of Light Hub. In terms of a withdrawal of the member, that would be forthcoming under the bylaws. So there's nothing in the agreement currently that speaks of the withdrawal of a member.
I guess that's one of the concerns I saw as well, is we're joining an entity without understanding the bylaws of it. And maybe that's common. We tend to I've only done this once before, and we had the bylaws worked up because we had a working document beforehand. We were converting from a special service district to an interlocal, so we kind of changed some things and flipped it over. So my only worry is joining something without knowing how it's going to operate. How do we get out of it? How do we withdraw? And I don't want to be the pessimistic, but that's just the thing in me saying, hey, there's a lot of stuff still being considered. I almost feel like this ought to be further down the road once we got things established a little better.
I just would point out that as a stakeholder, the bylaws would be drafted. I mean, the city would be the party who would be in conjunction with the other member,
right,
drafting those and enacting those. So at this stage, it would be safe to bet that there wouldn't be bylaws that would be contrary to any of our city interests, since we would be the ones who would be having to adopt them.
Unless there's a third city that joins. Or, in this case, as I read it, if there's a tie, the executive director breaks that tie. So really we got one vote with another city, and if that doesn't work out, then we're at the mercy of the executive director. I would just rather like to see what those bylaws look like. How do we get out of it? What if we're unhappy? Or I don't know. I've just seen too many contracts, and we know the litigation we're in right now with various contracts that have been entered into. And I'm not trying to delay it. is there a way we could add into the language that we approve this contingent upon bylaws forthcoming or something of that nature?
Would you mind if David Shaw speaks to that a little bit? He's had a little bit of experience with this.
Sure.
Yes, thank you. It is customary upon the adopting of an interlocal cooperative agreement that as a new entity, that the bylaws be adopted as the very next action. And they would speak in more detail to what are the authorities of the executive director, what are the limitations on the executive director, how is the executive director appointed and removed, and so forth. Tim is exactly right in saying that as one of the founding members of the agency, you would have a significant hand in the drafting of those. Whereas if you were to add as a member down the road and somebody else were the founding member, that you would add as a new member subject to those bylaws which have already been adopted instead of drafting them. And so you really do have a better power position as a founding member than you would down the road as an added member where the bylaws already exist.
I totally recognize that. I just feel like I have a hard time kind of giving the green light, not knowing what that looks like. So when do we see the timeline on the bylaws being done? When is the other entity doing their interlocal agreement and going into things?
Yeah, I think they are planning on voting next week, whereupon there would be an immediate movement toward the adoption of bylaws. So the drafting of those will likely take place over the next week.
So does something like a template exist then? Because a week's a
It
pretty
does.
quick time to flip around bylaws.
Yeah. There's already a template in place. It just has not been reviewed and finalized with the city and their legal counsels. They're chewing on it as we speak, but it's not yet done. But it's close.
So is our plan now, forgive me because I'm really trying hard to understand, are we now bonding under this little interlocal agreement, American Fork now? Where we weren't before, are we now?
The intention was not to use the interlocal to bond necessarily. There is an option for that, but our path at this point has been to bond just as a city.
That's something we could talk about, and we will have that ability passing us interlocal to actually use that if we deem it necessary or appropriate.
Would the rating agency still need to be involved because it's backed by the credit of the city with the interlocal agreement, as far as my understanding, right?
Yeah, the rating agencies would be involved in either event. What this does is it gives you basically the best of two options, and you would have the choice of going down whichever path is most favorable to the city.
Okay.
But yes, the rating agencies would still be involved either way.
So the other entity that's looking to jump on board, are they looking at using the entity, or are they looking at bonding on their own?
They're in the same position you are, as having the choice of either one. And so it does provide that benefit of whichever way is better. You'll note in the interlocal that as a project is formed, only the participating member of the project votes on that project. And so you don't lose any control to the other entity in the event you were to take that option.
So I guess when I'm looking at it, what is the driving factor to make this a priority right now that would need a vote tonight without having to look at those bylaws?
Part of that, I think, is as a founding member and as we would be drafting this and the other entities would be adopting this, I think the biggest benefit to us is that we could draft our own site agreements and that we would be able to control, especially the mid-mile and the NOC services. I think having drafted this and having been the founding member to enact this, then we kind of set those rules up front.
So when do we see any other entity other than the one I've mentioned that might be next week? When do we see those jumping on board?
I don't know exactly when that would be.
Is it fair to say they're further down the road as far as looking at and investigating this than we are? So it probably wouldn't be within 30 days. It would probably be more like 6 months at least?
Possibly longer, yeah.
Okay.
I think the entity that's named in the document, the other city, is they're definitely wanting this. They're ready to get going. They're a little bit ahead of us in some respect, and maybe a little behind us in some other respects. But they're very anxious to get going, and they're not driving everything that we're doing with this. But I think it's just it's a good measure to get started, and again, it puts us in a good position as a city, and to be able to negotiate and do what's in the interest of our own city with what assets we currently have that are very unique to us.
So I had a crazy idea. Is there any merit to doing a shorter term contract with that other entity right now? Seeing that there's no other entities looking to jump on immediately, that would still allow us to share those economies of scale that could then later, 6 months to a year, convert into an interlocal where we have a chance to look at those bylaws and have a chance to really see how that goes. And I see that kind of like the dating period, if you will, with that other entity, to see how this would really look at going forward before we jump into a long-term interlocal agreement.
Well, from my standpoint, I don't know where the other party mentioned is. I mean, it's Kaysville. It's a public document. Kaysville is talking about this. If bonding under that interlocal is critical to them, we've talked about not, so it's just a great choice for us. But if that's critical for them, then not having this in place would stop them from going forward, perhaps, in that way. I like having the choice. We're on the hook for it no matter what, but I don't. And I also believe as a new entity, we would draw up those bylaws, so I'm not really hung up on that either as we go forward. So if I like the idea of, as I talked at the work session, of kind of the self-salesmanship and self-marketing that comes with an interlocal agreement in these different cities. If Kaysville does choose to get on and this is the best mechanism for their bonding, then that would be the only thing I think would be the difference. I don't think it holds us at bay at all, whether we do that or not. But if it would be helpful to them, we immediately start defraying the cost of our use of our own asset, or sharing those costs, let's say, those economies. And so that's why I think I'm comfortable pushing forward, because we're not. That's where I am.
So who does the hiring of the executive director after we create this document?
That would be in the bylaws.
I do have a question about the bylaws. So if I'm understanding correctly, because what I've seen in the past is normally a board itself would approve and draw up bylaws. And in this case, we as a council are not on the board of Light Hub. But do we still approve those bylaws?
So it would be the board, it would be the Light Hub board, but you would have a representative that represents the city in that, and that representative would obviously be able to consult with our city council to say, hey, these are the proposed bylaws. Do we want to go down that path? Do you see any concerns? And so there is that connectivity. So.
Right, but it wouldn't be then ever an action item on our agenda, even if we had the bylaws right now? Is that what we're saying?
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
I guess what I would like to see is maybe that template, what path are we going down? It gives me a little more assurance than all of a sudden saying, hey, I think we're doing this over here, and all of a sudden the bylaws come out. And I thought, man, this interlocal agreement was heading this way, and now all of a sudden it's going this way. All we've got is a shell, right? Those bylaws are really going to define everything within inside that shell. Another interesting point, Mayor Frost and I had a lot of discussion when we had interlocal agreement come up with New Era and the dump that was down here. And we always ask the question, does that city representative have to vote according to how this body wants them to vote? Or do they vote in the best interest of the interlocal? And David would maybe have a good opinion on this, but my understanding is that fiduciary duty as a board member is that you have to represent the entity that you sit on, not necessarily the entity that you're representing. Does that make sense? So they'd have to vote in the interest of Light Hub, not necessarily the interest of American Fork City. So again, just trying to see where that goes. It's just hard going into something not knowing what it is. Usually we join interlocal agreement. It's pretty detailed out what we're doing. This is a brand new one. And that's why I just have a little bit of heartburn saying, gosh, we're kind of joining something without really knowing inside how that's going to work. Now, maybe staff has that understanding, but for me to cast a vote, I'm kind of going, gosh, it'd be nice to maybe have a little bit of clarity what that would look like. For instance, if it already exists, what does the termination of it say?
The dissolution is at the end. It's in paragraph or Article 16. So it requires 2/3 vote of the membership to dissolve.
Oh, I guess, I'm sorry, Tim, I meant for us to withdraw as an entity.
Oh.
Which I think you mentioned was going to be drafted in the bylaws, right?
That's where
Right.
And one of the caveats I think the council could place is just that those bylaws do come back before this body, before the board member votes.
So it turns out I may not be as clear. So on that, does American Fork City not own Light Hub?
So
That's right. It's a separate entity, and so we're a member of Light Hub, but its assets are controlled and owned by Light Hub. And so any
Wait,
revenue
wait.
and indebtedness,
Light
would-
Hub's assets are owned by Light Hub?
Yes, but we're a member of Light Hub, so any indebtedness and revenue essentially is assigned to the members.
So the knock
This is
and
the
the
point that I
fiber are
actually
no
asked
longer
David
ours.
about. It's
No.
because,
There's a
yeah,
contract.
right now,
There-
because this was confusing to
there's-
me too.
go
So
ahead.
right now, Light Hub has no assets.
That's right.
Or anything. It has no
right. And the
assets
only-
or debt or at all.
And the only assets they will have is by virtue of contract with American Fork City.
Well,
But
there'll be, I
those
mean,
are
like, there'll
not
be
their
trucks,
assets.
there'll be equipment that'll be used as a part of Light Hub, but the assets of the mid-mile fiber and the knock will not be an asset of Light Hub.
That's correct. Yeah, I mean, the only thing that makes this possible is American Fork City's asset.
that's right. And we retain that. That will not be Light Hub's asset, ever.
Okay. That's what I
So
was confused
Light
this
Hub's
morning.
assets would be very limited to what could be shared amongst the members.
But so this is what was throwing me. So their headquarters is our knock. So they're a contract to house themselves in that knock as well as administer all of those things and the mid-mile fiber, et cetera.
Yeah, just to clarify that point, the contract for the Knox services, the contract for the mid-mile, that would be a usage contract. That would not be a transfer of title ever. You retain title to those assets always. But let's take the scenario where the city chose to bond for its network through Light Hub. Then Light Hub would be the owner of the debt and the owner of those assets until such time as the debt is extinguished, and then you can determine as a member of Light Hub what happens to those assets.
The asset meaning the physical
Meaning
network.
the
ground
new
network
fiber in the ground
would be owned by Light Hub.
would be owned by Light Hub as a necessity of the bonding.
But if we didn't bond under it, then it wouldn't be owned
Then it
by
would be
Light Hub?
then it would be owned by American Fork.
Okay.
Yeah, and so there's a trade-off. Does the debt stay on your books or on Light Hub's books? If it's on Light Hub's books, then it's Light Hub's asset during the duration of the bonds. And then you can determine what happens to the title of the asset at that point.
But the board, the Light Hub board determines that.
Correct. But in that context, because it's the American Fork project, only American Fork votes on it. Kaysville would not.
So who determines the executive staff of Light Hub and the board?
That would be the board.
So who determines the board?
That's determined by the city councils.
So Kaysville and
Yes.
American Fork in this case, we would appoint the board members.
Correct.
Then the board members would appoint the executive directors of Light Hub.
Correct. And in our case tonight, it's proposed that we would have Mayor Frost serve as that initial board member for American Fork City.
Okay.
I don't think it says that each, maybe I just missed it, that each city only gets one per board member?
Article
It
9.
does say that.
It does say that? Okay.
All right, council.
Out of curiosity, say that we move forward with this tonight and we decide not to move forward with our project. What's our recourse?
We can still be part of Light Hub and not have a project even. I mean, that's even a possibility. Obviously, we wouldn't vote on our own project. We wouldn't have any contributions towards anything. So really, we could do that. We could be a member of Light Hub and not have a project.
But then we're subject to all the fees and all that stuff as well.
So in there, the board would set, they would be able to set fees if they are necessary and set a budget. But the city councils of each member city also have to approve the expenditure to finance those that debt or those expenses. And if the city councils don't, then Light Hub could say, hey, well, we're not going to provide any services to you. But in the case where we don't have a project, then that wouldn't be a problem.
So there were special assessments, I think I read in there somewhere, that they can come out and give special assessments and things like that to various cities, right? I just feel like we're jumping the gun, joining an entity without even really having our project nailed down and knowing what it's going to look like. There's so many questions we still haven't even answered as far as the fiber inside the city goes. Again, this just feels like it's premature in the queue. I'd almost think it'd be like, okay, yes, we're moving forward with this project. All of us have a really good understanding of where it's going. And maybe we do after that long meeting the other night, but it felt like there was still a lot of questions that a lot of us had, even from how do we enter people's property? And how do we legally go about installing the fiber? To start joining an entity, it just feels like that's premature at this point. And if there's things we need to do together with Kaysville to help us both further along, I'd rather do a more shorter-term contract that's a little clearer and more transparent, and then we can always convert to an interlocal down the road. I don't see where that hurts us at all, but I feel like it builds in some protections for us.
Do you feel this is not transparent, what we have here?
Right, and the reason why is because there's no bylaws associated with it. We have no idea how to get out of this if we join it.
But it's a brand new entity, so I'm down with the bylaws. I don't struggle with that, Rob. I mean, but that's from past experience I've had with my own business in creating those bylaws. The entity was there, then we crafted the bylaws. So I don't have heartburn with that. Not that yours isn't valid or warranted, but my question is, so, I mean, I've already made up my mind by virtue of what you said tonight with, I don't want to bond through the interlocal. I don't want to, I know there's much that I still have to understand. but I want that asset to be ours, and that's, so if we enter into this interlocal and we decide, like Councilman Chilton says, we don't go forward, Kaysville wants to go forward, we can still construct a contract with our NOC through this interlocal because we're a part of this, right? And, you know, economies of scale still exist even though we don't have that. And we, you know, we're still in an okay spot there. Is that correct?
I think the opposite is true as well. If we did a short-term contract, we'd share in those expenses and be able to have all that benefit there.
Unless Kaysville wants to bond through the interlocal.
And I thought that it was said, and maybe I understood wrong, that they weren't going to. Did I understand that? Are they, is that an option that is?
They're still deciding which way to go, just as you're having those same thoughts. But there are two components to the interlocal. One is the ability to finance through it. The other is the ability to have operational efficiencies and economies of scale, as you mentioned, Mr. Taylor. And so it is. It's two sides of the coin, and so you benefit by providing your NOC services and your mid-mile fiber to Light Hub. As other cities come on board, you would receive additional revenue by virtue of their subscribership that you otherwise wouldn't have. And so it's that operational side that we haven't discussed a lot tonight. We've talked about the finance side and the ownership side, but it's really the operational side where you begin to realize economies of scale that you otherwise wouldn't have.
And I wonder about that, David. Wouldn't we realize those economies of scale if we just did a contract for services?
You might if you did it just with Kaysville,
Right.
but then you would have to do the same thing with everybody else who's considering doing the same thing, and there are others.
Right.
They're
But
just
we
not as far down the road.
We could still realize that economies of scale in the next 6 months, get things up and running, and then convert to interlocal, and those other entities could then benefit from it at that point in time.
You could, but then you wouldn't be on the front end of setting the rules of the road.
I think we still would, because we'd still be the founding member of that
You'd be,
interlocal agreement.
but you might be one of 6 instead of one of 2.
Depends on who we invite to be the founding members, I guess, right?
That's
Or
true.
not. So we maintain control.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
all depends on who we invite to the party.
That's true. So
Who and when they get invited in seems to be part of that equation.
true.
And it seems like if down the road they want in and we've already got this box set up, I'm just going to call it a box, then they have to accept that box. But if down the road the box isn't set up, then we have to accept to some extent what some of these other people may want, it seems to me in my mind. But in the end, no matter what happens, which road we go down, I am understanding that we still have the NOC. It's still our toy, and we're in charge of our toy, and we're going to do with it what we want to do with it, no matter which road we go down. Is that a fair statement? I want to see a whole bunch of heads over there, not just one, going like this.
Well, I think we have to bond outside of the interlocal.
And my second comment is I don't want to do any bonding in an interlocal from what I understand as of 7:57 tonight. I want to keep it completely separate, and I think each city should want to do the same thing, and I'm in favor of actually requiring that. I'm not sure I want the interlocal to even be able to bond, but maybe we have to, and that's something we cannot do. But I'm totally in favor of us doing it outside of it also. So that's my 2 cents worth.
I do have one quick question. Where did the 50-year term, where did the number 50, where did we come up with that?
It's in the statute.
Okay. Okay, perfect.
There's another thing to look at. If we do a short-term contract and Kaysville, or if anybody else joins, if they opt out during that time, then we're lost. But if we have this in place, then at least we have more power.
And that's assuming the bylaws
Yeah.
restrict them.
Right.
That's the problem, is we don't know.
Well, we're gonna be at the table, so if they don't, it's on us.
Yeah, and if we aren't at the
Yeah,
table,
yeah, we
that's
are
our
at the head of the
fault.
table. If I were king for a day. So I think I've got enough. I would rather be at the table and control our destiny than, that's just the way I feel about it. I don't see the motion on the thing, so I'm gonna do my best to make my own. And that is, I would authorize the mayor and city council to execute, the interlocal cooperative agreement of the Light Hub Communications Agency. I don't know whether I need to put in there in regards to the bylaws coming back through the city council. We talked about that at one point tonight, David.
Yeah, you can add that. To the motion. I think there was a little bit more to the motion, suggested motion. You don't have to include
So,
that
yeah,
as far as.
Yeah, I was just trying to do my best and appoint Mayor Frost as the city's representative on Light Hub's board of directors.
And you'd want to put that brief amendment there about the
11.6, the quorum.
right, the
Yeah.
quorum.
Yes, and outlining also the change in 11.6 that goes for the members of the board in attendance. So the clarification, so approve the resolution authorizing execution, Mayor Frost as the city's representative on Light Hub's board, and the city council to be able to view the bylaws prior to adoption.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Taylor, second by Councilmember Christiansen. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a roll call vote. Councilmember Christiansen,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
Really torn on it. Brad, I think you do a great job on there, but just from what I've mentioned tonight, that's why I'm gonna vote nay. That's nothing to do with our capability to do my way. Council Britton's part said definitely vote yes on that.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. We will not be holding a closed session tonight. Just put it on there as a placeholder, and no new information is relevant. I know that disappoints everybody here, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Have a motion by Councilmember Taylor, second by Councilmember Barnes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we stand adjourned.